Okay guys, we are going to be reading A Visit to Kitt Peak. Again, it comes from our Reading A to Z subscription. So Visit to Kitt Peak, some of the text structures that we will be looking at, or that this story has to help us understand what we are reading, are illustrations or photographs that are actually labeled or may have a bit of a description underneath them describing what is going on. So we have that here. This one has a photograph that is labeled. We have a table of contents that tells us what we are going to be reading about, so we can look at this and realize that this is going to give us a little introduction about what is Kitt Peak. On page 4, we're going to learn about a solar telescope, something to do with the sun. When we hear the word solar, it means something to do with the sun. On page 6, star telescopes on page 10, star searching from home on page 14, a conclusion, so it just summarizes everything we've read on page 15, and we also see that we have a glossary and an index on page 16. Again, as we're reading through, we are going to have some headings. That helps us understand what we are going to be reading about in the paragraphs that follow. As you're reading through, you will also see some words that are bolded. They are in bold. That means those words, those terms, are found in the glossary at the back, and it'll give the definition, the meaning of those words. So if you come to a word that's bolded and you're unsure what it means, all you have to do is go to the glossary at the back and find that word. So, for example, this word, amateur astronomer. Okay, well, what does amateur and astronomer mean? So we flip to the glossary at the back, which is on page 16. If my fingers would work, that would help. There we are. So we're on page 16. Here's our glossary. Okay, and we're going to find amateur and astronomer here. Amateur, a person who does something for fun, not to get paid, not a professional. Okay, something you do for fun, it's a hobby, it's a habit, something that you're just doing, you're an amateur. Amateur can also mean that you're just starting out at something. Okay, astronomer, what does astronomer mean? A scientist who studies objects in space, such as stars and planets. So an amateur astronomer is somebody who is checking out what's happening in space, the stars, the planets, all those things, asteroids, meteorites, all those things, but they're not getting paid for it. Okay, it's not their job. It's something that they're doing because they're interested in it and it's for fun. Okay, so that's how you would use a glossary. While we're here, let's take a look at an index. An index gives us certain words that are important or topics that are important in the story, and it gives us exactly what page we can find them on. So, say you were doing a research project on Jupiter. You could flip to the index in this book and scroll through, and yes, the words are listed alphabetically. Scroll through and see if there's anything on Jupiter. Oh, look, Jupiter, it's on page 11. So then you could go right to page 11 and read everything that you need to know about Jupiter that this story will tell you. Okay, it's a quick and easy way to find information. All right, so let's go back to the beginning of our story. And again, we are reading A Visit to Kitt Peak. A peak usually means a land formation that is higher, top of a hill, top of a mountain. It's the peak, the top. Okay, so A Visit to Kitt Peak. Okay, we are starting off here, and we have first this picture that shows a nice photograph of what we are thinking is Kitt Peak. Now we can see from this picture that there are multiple telescopes at Kitt Peak. Okay, I don't know a lot about this place, but I'm assuming that all these different telescopes must have different purposes. A different telescope maybe to look for stars, a different telescope to look for planets, a different telescope to maybe look for asteroids. I don't know. That's just a prediction I'm making. Okay, so we see a lot of different structures here. A lot of them are in a cone shape, maybe with a cylinder shape with a cone on top, pardon me. We have this one interesting looking structure though. It looks like a huge slide, and that is a McMath Pierce Solar Telescope. So I think I'm inferring that this is probably a telescope that studies the sun, since its name has solar in it. Okay, let's read a little bit and find out. Introduction. Okay. Hi, I'm Sherry. Not me, obviously the girl who's writing this story. Her name is Sherry. Okay, she's writing about this. Hi, I'm Sherry, and I'm an amateur astronomer, which means that just for fun, I like to learn about faraway stars and planets and other mysterious things in space. I recently toured Kitt Peak National Observatory. It sits high atop a 6,875 foot tall mountain outside of Tucson, Arizona. Okay, so it is on top of a mountain, okay, and it's way up high, and they've put all these telescopes there, and it's an observatory. To observe means to look at things, to watch things, okay, so it's an observatory where we're watching the sky and our solar system. The land the observatory is built on belongs to a Native American tribe. Okay? I heard the tribe wasn't going to let astronomers build on its sacred mountain, but the tribe changed its mind after looking through a telescope. They started saying the astronomers had long eyes since they could see so far with their telescopes. That made me laugh. I pictured people looking up at the stars with eyes longer than their arms, but it made a lot of sense because a telescope does make it seem as though your eye can reach the stars. Okay, so a telescope zooms in. It's like looking through a pair of binoculars, but so powerful that it allows you to see specific things in space. Okay. And here's a little map of what that area looks like, so we can see where the parking lot is and the visitor center. So this is a map of this area. Okay, this is a hand-drawn map of that photograph. All right. The mountaintop is perfect for stargazing. Away from city lights, it stays pitch dark at night. That's important. Being on a mountain keeps the telescopes above the dusty dirt that the wind churns up in the valley below. That is also important. Besides, being up high gets you even closer to the planets and stars. True. Before going inside the telescopes, we stood at the edge of the mountain to look out at the small city of Tucson in the distance. I could see the base of the mountain near where I live. Though it was a hot and dusty summer day in Tucson, we had to wear jackets on the cool, windy mountaintop. I was glad to have a break from Tucson's heat. Okay, so Tucson in itself, in Arizona, is usually quite warm, but up on top of the mountain, it's cooler up there. Okay? Kitt Peak has a collection of 26 humongous telescopes. These aren't telescopes you can hold in your hand. All these telescopes need an entire building to hold them up and protect them. Okay, so these telescopes are huge. And the larger they are, I'm assuming the more powerful they are. Okay, the further they can see. Okay, how the view of Tucson changed. Tucson city lights in 1959. You can see we can barely see any city lights. The city was smaller back then. Tucson city lights in 1980, we can see that there's more lights there. The city has grown. And then Tucson city lights in 2003, we can see that there's even more lights. So obviously the population of Tucson and the technology within Tucson has increased. The tour at Kitt Peak let me get close to 3 of them. One is a solar telescope that astronomers use during the day for studying the sun. The other two are star telescopes they use at night for studying stars and planets and other mysterious things in space. Aliens? Solar telescope. I had never heard of a solar telescope before going to Kitt Peak. Since the sun is a star, I had always thought that astronomers studied it with the same telescopes they used for other stars. But I learned that because the sun is so bright, scientists need different equipment to look at it. That's interesting. I never knew that myself. That's very cool. Kitt Peak has the largest solar telescope in the world. Standing next to it I felt like an ant. It is as tall as a 10-story building. On the top of the telescope, it looks as if there is a picket fence, which is actually a windbreak to keep one of the telescope's mirrors from shaking. Then there is this large ramp that looks like a slide coming off one side. The slide-like ramp actually continues at the same angle 4 stories below the ground. This thing is huge. So that structure that looked like the slide at the beginning that we were looking at, so it was like, well, this and this, okay, it actually goes down underground for 4 stories. Okay, so it's like there's 4 basements underneath each other, one underneath each other, 4 times. Okay, so that's a huge, huge building. It's a huge structure. Okay, so here it is. You can see this building, and it goes under the ground, 4 stories underground. From the air, Kitt Peak Solar Telescope looks like a giant slide. It sure does. Okay, so here we see it again and again. And this is a great picture right here to show you how there's this structure above ground and then how it continues underground 4 stories. And here it also has some other things underground. It's a shaft for instruments. So this must be where a lot of the technology and the instruments are held so that this solar telescope can do its job. From the inside, the McMath Pierce Solar Telescope looks like a roller coaster track. It has 200 feet of track above ground and 300 feet below. It needs that much space to keep the sun's reflected light from burning up the equipment. Oh wow, that shows the power of the sun. The solar telescope has 3 mirrors that do most of the work by reflecting the sun's light. The mirrors are on a trolley, so astronomers can move them along a track. I learned that the trolley moves the mirrors really slowly, 4 feet per minute. That would make it a really boring roller coaster. I could run up and down the distance of the track at least twice before the mirrors move 4 feet. Okay, so they're slowly moving these mirrors on. You can see the flat mirror, a curved mirror. There's the wind fence. The sun's rays are hitting down there. Very interesting. Okay, that's part 1. I'll continue on with the second video next.